improved so much. I played her at the beginning of the year, so I know what I'm up against, and I will just try to do my best again, and I know it's going to be a tough match. I have so much respect for her game. I'm doing a lot of good things. She was just playing much better than me, and I was just waiting for a window where maybe I can get a little bit more aggressive and I can get a point here and there, and got her in trouble. And yeah, I was a bit lucky, a bit played good in a good moment.
Did you catch that? Run it back. Run it back one more time, because what you just listened to was not a supporter speaking. That was not a broadcaster. That was not a Filipino reporter hunting for a favorable angle. That was the woman who, 48 hours from now, is going to step onto the same court as Alexandra Eala, lock eyes with her across the net, and attempt with every ounce of her being to crush this Miami dream all over again. That was her rival, showering her with praise without being prompted, without hesitation, without a single condition or exception or tactful sidestep. Let that settle in, because this is not merely a press conference moment. This is the entire tennis universe speaking to you in real time through the words of the very player standing between Eala and the round of 16. That what is unfolding at Miami Open 2026 is beyond anything this tournament has ever witnessed before.
In such a phenomenon, to see the support you've gotten all over the world, is there any place that surprised you that you were like, wow, I didn't know there were so many Filipinos here?
No, because we are kind of everywhere. Yeah, we are everywhere, I have noticed.
We are going to dissect every word, every dimension, everything it signifies for Saturday's match, for Ella's ranking, for the tournament, and for the 115 million Filipinos who haven't rested properly since Thursday morning. Settle in. You need to absorb all of this. Let's begin with Thursday, because before Linette uttered a single word about Eala, before that interview, before that quote, before any of it, Alex Eala accomplished something on Hard Rock Stadium's court that should have been the headline of every sports publication on the planet. She competed in the longest match of her entire WTA career, 3 hours and 20 minutes against 38-year-old German veteran Laura Seigund, ranked 53rd in the world, a player who has been a professional for 2 full decades and who knows every single trick in the book. And this was not a smooth, commanding 3-set cruise. This was a battle, a brutal, ill-tempered, physically grueling war.
I had to be patient. I'm sorry, the match was so long, I lost my voice. I think patience was key, and waiting for the right moments, yeah, patience, a lot of patience.
Both players lodged complaints with the umpire in a tense, heated affair. When Eala was serving at 2-1 inch the second set, Seigund wandered off after the Filipino player fumbled her ball toss. Eala objected to Seigund stalling between points. Mind games from a player who has been running them since before Alex Eala was old enough to grip a racket. And Eala, 20 years old, defending 390 points in the most high-pressure tournament of her year, didn't buckle, didn't collapse, didn't let the gamesmanship burrow into her head. Eala had led 3-0, 5-4, and 6-5 inches the opening set. She squandered 4 set points. Then she squandered the tiebreak. The first set gone, more than an hour and 20 minutes of tennis, and she had nothing to show for it. In a different player, that is the moment the head drops. That is the moment the shoulders cave in and the crowd begins to fall silent and the opponent senses weakness. But Eala came back out and she broke Seigund's serve early in both the second and third sets. Precise, efficient, merciless. The match that looked like it might spiral into a catastrophe became a declaration. It was the 5th longest tour-level match of the entire 2026 season, and she walked off the court, looked straight at the camera, and inscribed 2 words on the lens: déjà vu. She then said in her on-court interview, "It definitely was close, very demanding physically and mentally, but that was one of my goals last year after this tournament, to improve physically. And here I am, fresh as a flower." Fresh as a flower.
Close.
It definitely was close, very demanding physically and mentally, but that was one of my goals last year after this tournament, was to improve physically, and here I am, fresh as a flower, so yeah.
Alex, last question, ranked 140.
After 3 hours and 20 minutes against a 2-decade veteran who was attempting to psychologically unravel her throughout, fresh as a flower, and the critics who had been sharpening their "Eala is too fragile for the long haul" takes since Indian Wells got a sentence they cannot deploy because you don't get to label someone fragile after they survived the 5th longest match of the season and described themselves as fresh as a flower. The WTA video of her post-match interview accumulated more than 153,000 views and over 9,200 reactions on Facebook within the first 2 hours. Her match highlights were viewed more than 280,000 times and gathered over 10,000 reactions within the first 3 hours. 153,000 views for a post-match interview after a second-round victory at an event where the reigning world #1 and defending champion is also competing. The gap between Alex Eala's digital footprint and everyone else at this tournament is so staggering that drawing a comparison feels almost unjust. But this is the reality that the WTA is navigating right now. And it is the reality that Magda Linette stepped directly into when she defeated Swiatek that same afternoon. Now, let's talk about what Linette actually accomplished, because it was extraordinary and because it is the reason Saturday's match is the most complicated, most perilous, most captivating matchup remaining in the women's draw. Magda Linette, world number 50, 34 years old, a player who had just fallen in the first round at Indian Wells 2 weeks ago, walked onto center court at Hard Rock Stadium and defeated Iga Swiatek, 6-time Grand Slam champion, reigning Wimbledon champion, the second seed, 1-6-7-5-6-3. It was Swiatek's first opening match defeat at a WTA Tour event in 74 consecutive tournaments. 74. That is not a streak, that is a dynasty. And Linette, coached by the legendary Agnieszka Radwanska, arguably the greatest Polish women's player of the modern era, just brought it to an end at the very tournament where Swiatek was expecting to face the girl who humiliated her 12 months ago and finally settle the score.
Well, you can see she's competing against the very best here tonight. Didn't need to go that close to the line there.
Here's the rewritten version in US English with synonyms, keeping all sentences intact. Swiatek couldn't convert. She earned just 1 breakpoint total in the second and third sets. "I stopped executing anything well tactically," she said. "It just was a poor match for me in the second and third sets. The second seed eliminated, the marquee rematch canceled, the draw blown wide open, and then Linette settled in front of the cameras and she said it. I'm glad that Filipinos are being introduced to tennis. That is the moment. And now, let's talk about exactly why those 8 words are one of the most consequential things spoken at this entire tournament. This is where most people stop. They play the clip, they say, "Wow, that's lovely," and they move on. But we are not moving on because those 8 words carry an entire philosophy, and once you grasp what is actually inside them, you cannot unhear it. Magda Linette is 34 years old. She has been a professional tennis player since 2009. She has competed at Australian Opens and Wimbledons, and US Opens and Roland Garros. She has witnessed every kind of crowd, every kind of atmosphere, every kind of storyline that professional tennis has to offer in 17 years on tour. She reached a Grand Slam semi-final. She captured 3 WTA titles. She has competed in front of partisan crowds in Poland, in front of hostile crowds in America, in front of indifferent crowds at minor tournaments in countries where tennis barely registers. And she looked at what Eala has done to the tennis world and said, I am happy. Not, she's a solid player. Not, it should be a terrific match. Not the kind of diplomatic, hollow response that players give when they're trying to say something without saying anything. She said, happy, genuinely, openly, publicly happy, that because of this 20-year-old Filipino girl, an entirely new nation of people is watching the sport that Linette has devoted 17 years of her life to. She said, I just had to push a little bit more. I had to start striking a little bit faster too to push her a little bit further back, not give her breathing room. But I think it all started with serving a bit better. That was her tactical breakdown of the victory. Precise, professional, no celebration, no theatrics. And then when the conversation turned to her next opponent, she abandoned the tactics entirely and led with her heart. That contrast is everything. She is cold and calculated about the biggest win of her 2026 season. And she is warm and generous about the 20-year-old she has to defeat on Saturday. Because Magda Linette, for all the weight of this moment, understands something the critics will never grasp. Alex Eala is not merely her opponent. Alex Eala is the reason this match carries meaning. The reason this center court will be packed to capacity. The reason this round of 32 will be broadcast into living rooms in Manila and Dubai and Los Angeles and London and everywhere a Filipino flag has ever been planted. And Linette, who has spent 17 years fighting for relevance in a sport that can be brutally indifferent to players outside the top 10, is grateful for it. Because when you have poured everything into a sport and then watched a 20-year-old girl from a country nobody anticipated suddenly make that sport matter to 115 million new people, the only sincere response is, I am happy, but now, let's be brutally candid about what Saturday actually means. Because gratitude is beautiful, and the praise is genuine, and the moment is everything. But when it's all said and done, Magda Linette is coming for Alex Eala with everything she possesses. And she possesses more than people realize. Their head-to-head stands at 2-1 inch Linette's favor. She defeated Eala in Abu Dhabi in 2024, 7-6, 6-1. She defeated Eala in Nottingham in 2025, 6-4, 6-3. She knows this game. She has sat across the net from Eala and mapped out the angles. She has a coach, Agnieszka Radwanska, who can identify tactical vulnerabilities that most spectators watching from the stands would never detect in 100 viewings. She is currently guided by former world number 2 Agnieszka Radwanska, one of the greatest Polish tennis players of all time. And Radwanska built her career on reading opponents, on dismantling games, on locating the gap between a player's strength and their vulnerability and exploiting it with surgical precision. She will have spent Thursday evening dissecting Ella's match against Saigon frame by frame. She will have uncovered things. She will have handed Linette a strategy. Eala reversed the head-to-head in Auckland in January 2026, defeating Linette 6-3, 6-2 inches the quarterfinals, convincingly, dominantly, with the kind of scoreline that suggests a player who had completely cracked the puzzle. But Miami is not Auckland, Hard Rock Stadium is not New Zealand, and Linette, fresh, rested, riding the momentum of the biggest victory of her season, is not the same player who stepped onto an Auckland court in January. Eala faces Linette as the higher-seeded, higher-ranked player. She is the favorite on paper, but she also played 3 hours and 20 minutes on Thursday. She also had her composure tested by Saigon's gamesmanship. She also carries 390 points of pressure on her shoulders because if she exits here, the fall from world number 29 will be significant and swift. Eala said, I'm truly pleased with how I'm handling everything as a whole. A lot of things have shifted for me this year. So I think I'm doing a solid job of maintaining that balance of being driven and staying content and still putting in the work. Driven, content, putting in the work. 3 words from a player who understands better than any analyst can articulate from the outside exactly what this balancing act demands. She is not pretending the pressure doesn't exist. She is not performing invincibility. She is saying, I know what I have to do. I know how to hold the tension between ambition and joy. And I know with every fiber of a career built from the Rafael Nadal Academy to the top 30 of the world that I belong here." And then she told Tennis Channel the story that shook the internet.
I was blowing up, my phone was blowing up, and I tried not to look at it a lot. And Rafa sent me a message, but I saw it like 4 days after.
He was buried in
Yeah,
your DMs.
so I left him undelivered for 4 days, and I almost died. I don't do that, guy, but he was super nice.
Here's the final section rewritten in US English with synonyms, keeping all sentences intact. She left Rafael Nadal on red for 4 days because her phone was so overwhelmed with messages from 115 million Filipinos that a personal message from the greatest clay court player in the history of the sport got buried. And when she finally saw it and nearly had a breakdown, as she put it, he was gracious about it. Because of course he was. Because what do you say to a girl who broke the internet so completely that she accidentally ignored you? She continued, "It was such a privilege to share the court with him. He gave me some pointers on my forehand and a few other minor pieces of guidance. This is the first time I've ever hit with him in my life, and it's simply a memory that will endure forever." Forehand pointers from Rafael Nadal after accidentally leaving him on red for 4 days. And then she went out and played the longest match of her WTA career and declared she was fresh as a flower. This is the girl that Magda Linette praised without being prompted. This is the girl that 280,000 people watched a highlight reel of within 3 hours. This is the girl arriving for Saturday's center court with the roar of 115 million people at her back. If Ella prevails on Saturday, she faces a potential 4th-round clash against 13th seed Karolina Muchova, a 2-time Grand Slam finalist who knocked her out at the US Open last year. The draw has not grown easier, it has grown more formidable. Every round is a former top 10 player, a Grand Slam champion, a veteran who understands the game at a molecular level. But that is the thing about Alexandra Eala that the numbers cannot capture and the head-to-head records cannot measure. She does not care who is standing on the other side of the net. She did not care that it was Swiatek last year. She did not care that it was Goff at Indian Wells. She inscribed deja vu on the camera after defeating Saigon because returning to Miami, returning to this court, returning to the place where everything transformed, that is not pressure for her. That is home. She said it herself. "I came to Miami last year as a wild card. Now I'm in the 3rd round again." So I'm really, really happy, and especially having been able to compete at this level today against an incredible fighter. Really, really happy in the middle of defending 390 points, in the middle of the longest match of her career, in the middle of the gamesmanship, and the pressure and the immense weight of an entire nation's hope. Really, really happy. And Magda Linette, the woman standing in her path, the woman who just toppled a giant, the woman guided by one of the sharpest minds in the history of women's tennis, looked at all of this and offered not a single negative word. She said, "I am glad that Filipinos are being introduced to tennis. Saturday, the court fills, the flags rise, the noise ignites. And somewhere in that roar, beneath every chant, inside every banner, across every face of every Filipino who stayed up past midnight or purchased an expensive seat or flew across the country to be inside that stadium, is the same message that Magda Linette delivered without anyone prompting her to. She belongs here. We always knew it. And now even the opposition is saying so. Go, Alex. Saturday is yours." The Eala versus Linette match is taking place Saturday on center court at the Miami Open. If you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button right now. Smash the like, ring the bell, because every single time Alexandra Eala walks onto a tennis court in 2026, history is made, and Saturday will be no different.